Hello, beautiful people of YouTube. Hopefully, I've sorted my microphone out this time. And hello from the building heat of Texas. I've just had a little ride on my bicycle and just got out of the swimming pool, hence the wet hair. And I thought, let me pop in and just say hello and talk very briefly about a book that I'm reading at the moment that I'm really enjoying. And I must say that I purchased the book probably about 10 years ago, and I was reading one or two stories per year up until recently, where I've started reading it voraciously. And that book is The Complete Stories by Dorothy Parker. And Dorothy Parker, the tales are tales of ordinary people living ordinary lives, but Dorothy Parker has an extremely sharp wit, and she uses these brilliant one-liners and just makes these observations that probably many of us make, I would hope, but never really capture, never really discuss, never really talk about it. And I think that Dorothy Parker captures it in an absolutely brilliant way in the majority of her stories. In particular, there was one I was reading the other night, Mrs. Carrington and Mrs. Crane, and it's just a 3 or 4 page story about these two ladies who are sitting there in the afternoon and they're talking to each other about life, and they start to talk about all of their social circle and saying how they're all so shallow and all they talk about is gossip and buying clothes and drinking. And while they're talking about it, they're sitting there in the afternoon and they're drinking, and of course they're gossiping, and they throw in the occasional line about buying clothes and what are they going to wear, and they start criticizing the social circle for wearing, 3 people go to a party wearing the same dress in different colors, and how unoriginal they are. And then it turns out that they're going to a party that night and they start discussing what they're going to be wearing that night, and one of the ladies says, well, I'm going to be wearing this dress in blue, and I believe that this lady has it in beige, she's probably going to be wearing that as well. So you get the gist of it. Ultimately, they're just being very hypocritical, as people tend to be. But there's also, mixed with the humorous, comical, social commentary of many of the stories, there are also some really beautifully dark stories written about things like being awake in the middle of the night, suffering insomnia, not being able to sleep, of course, and then all the thoughts that come to you during that period. And I relate to that tremendously. I'm sure many of you do. I'm sure we all do. But not many of us will actually jump up at 3 o'clock in the morning and start writing a story that's going to be published in the New York Times. Of course, these were all being published. I think the stories in the book run from around about 1929 through to 1934, if I'm not mistaken. Most of the ones that I've been reading over the last few days were published in 1933 in a lot of the magazines and papers at the time. And anyway, Dorothy Parker, if you have not heard of her before or encountered her work before, I recommend that you go out and purchase The Complete Stories. That's a little animation there of some kind of Dorothy Parker on the cover, and the fact that the door says men is kind of sums up in one word what you will read. And it's just beautifully comical, satirical, fantastic literature from New York. I forgot to mention that Dorothy Parker, she was born in New Jersey, lived in New York for the majority of her life, and so it's captured in that 19 1930s New York scene, which makes it even more fascinating to me. Anyway, have a great weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.